The telegram arrived at sunset on the third day of Victoria Brennan's marriage, and with it came the end of her honeymoon and the beginning of a nightmare that would test everything she thought she knew about trust, loyalty, and love in the unforgiving landscape of West Texas in 1882. Victoria stood on the porch of the ranch house 15 miles outside Desdemona, watching the dust trail of the approaching rider with a sense of foreboding she could not name. Her husband of 3 days, William Sutton, had ridden out that morning to check the northern fence line and wasn't expected back until nightfall. The ranch foreman, a gruff man named Patterson, had accompanied him, leaving Victoria alone with the cook and 2 ranch hands who were working somewhere out near the stables. The isolation had not bothered her until this moment, when the rider appeared on the horizon like a harbinger of something dark and unavoidable. The man who dismounted in front of the house wore a sheriff's badge that caught the dying light. He was middle-aged, with weather-worn features and eyes that held no warmth as they settled on Victoria. "Mrs. Sutton?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Yes," Victoria replied, smoothing her hands over her simple cotton dress. She had not yet grown accustomed to her married name, to the weight of it and all it represented. "My husband is not here at present. May I help you with something, Sheriff?" "Sheriff Hawkins," he introduced himself without tipping his hat. "And it is you I have come to see, madam. There has been an incident in town. The railroad payroll was stolen from the bank this morning. $10,000 gone." Victoria's breath caught in her throat. $10,000 was a fortune, more money than most people in Desdemona would see in a lifetime. "That is terrible news, Sheriff, but I do not understand what it has to do with me. Witnesses place you in town this morning, Mrs. Sutton, near the bank, around the time of the theft." The accusation hung in the air between them like gun smoke. Victoria's mind raced back to her morning in Desdemona, the innocent errands that had seemed so ordinary at the time. She had needed fabric for new curtains, and the general store had been close to the bank. She had walked past it, certainly, but nothing more. "I was shopping," she said, hearing the defensive note in her voice and hating it. "I did walk past the bank, but I had nothing to do with any robbery." "The bank clerk says different," Hawkins said flatly. "Says he saw a woman matching your description lingering near the back entrance just before the theft was discovered. Young woman, dark hair, green dress." "You wearing a green dress this morning, Mrs. Sutton?" Victoria looked down at her current dress, blue calico, then back at the sheriff. "Yes," she admitted, because lying would only make things worse. "But I did not linger anywhere. I walked from the general store to the boarding house where I left my packages, then returned home. You may ask Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house. She will confirm I was there." "Already did," Hawkins said. "She confirms you were there, but she also says you seemed nervous, agitated, kept looking over your shoulder like you were afraid of being followed." This was absurd, a twisting of innocent actions into something sinister. Victoria had been nervous because she was still adjusting to life in Desdemona, to being married to a man she had known for only 2 months before becoming his wife. She was 22 years old, alone in a strange town, trying to build a life from the fragments of the one she had left behind in Mississippi after her father's death. "I was not agitated," she said firmly. "I was simply unfamiliar with the town. I had no reason to be involved in any robbery." "That remains to be seen," Hawkins said. "I am going to need you to come back to town with me, Mrs. Sutton. There are questions that need answering." "I would prefer to wait for my husband to return," Victoria said, though she knew it was futile. The law did not wait for anyone's convenience. "This is not a request," Hawkins said, and his hand moved closer to the gun at his hip. a gesture that made Victoria's blood run cold. She rode into Desdemona in the back of a wagon driven by one of Hawkins's deputies, a silent young man who would not meet her eyes. The town was larger than it had seemed during her previous visits, a sprawling collection of wooden buildings that served the railroad workers, ranch hands, and settlers who had made this corner of Texas their home. The sun was setting behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the dusty Main Street as they approached the sheriff's office. A crowd had gathered outside, and Victoria recognized some of the faces from her wedding 3 days ago. The seamstress who had altered her wedding dress, the preacher who had performed the ceremony, the banker, Mr. Carlyle, who had congratulated William with hearty handshakes and assured them both that Desdemona was a fine place to build a future. Now those same faces watched her with suspicion and something darker, a hunger for scandal that made her feel exposed and vulnerable. Inside the sheriff's office, Victoria was led to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. Hawkins sat across from her, a notepad in front of him, and began asking questions. Where had she been that morning? Who had she spoken with? Had she gone inside the bank? Did she know anyone who worked at the railroad? The questions came rapid fire, designed to confuse and trap, and Victoria answered each one as honestly as she could while her mind spun with fear and disbelief. "I did not steal any money," she said for what felt like the 100th time. "I have no need of stolen money. My husband is a successful rancher. We have everything we need." "Do you?" Hawkins asked, leaning back in his chair. "Because from what I understand, William Sutton has been struggling to keep his ranch afloat for the past 2 years. Drought has been hard on everyone, but especially on those who overextended themselves during the good years. $10,000 would solve a lot of problems for a man in his position." The insinuation was clear, and it made Victoria's temper flare. "My husband would never steal." "And neither would I. We are honest people, Sheriff Hawkins. You have no evidence against me beyond the word of a bank clerk who thinks he saw someone who looked like me. That is hardly grounds for an arrest." "Maybe not," Hawkins conceded, "but it is grounds for a search." "I want to search your person, Mrs. Sutton, and I want to search your home. If you are innocent as you claim, you will have no objection." The thought of this man's hands on her person, searching through her belongings, made Victoria feel sick. But she also knew that refusing would only make her look guilty. She was about to consent when the door to the room burst open and a figure filled the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with dust on his clothes and fury in his eyes. "What the hell is going on here?" The voice was deep and rough, edged with anger, and it took Victoria a moment to place it. Then she remembered the cowboy from her wedding. He had been standing at the back of the church, a friend of William's foreman, she thought, though she had not been introduced. She remembered noticing him because he had seemed so out of place among the settlers and townspeople, with his worn leather vest and the way he carried himself like a man accustomed to danger. "This is official business, Cole," Hawkins said, standing. "You need to leave. Official business." The cowboy, Cole apparently, stepped further into the room, his gaze moving from the sheriff to Victoria and back again. "Official harassment is more like it. I was at the Silver Star when word came through that you had dragged Mrs. Sutton in here. On her wedding week, Hawkins." "Have you lost your mind? Stay out of this," Hawkins warned. "The payroll was stolen. We have a witness who places her at the scene." "A witness who is probably half blind and scared out of his wits," Cole shot back. "I know Tom Garrett. He could not identify his own mother in a lineup if money was involved. You are grasping at straws because you have no real leads, and you are willing to ruin a woman's reputation to cover your own incompetence." Victoria watched this exchange with a mixture of shock and gratitude. She did not know this man, did not understand why he was defending her so fiercely, but she was grateful nonetheless. Hawkins's face had turned red with anger, and his hand moved toward his gun again, a gesture that made Cole go very still. "You threatening me, Sheriff?" Cole's voice was soft now, dangerous. "I am doing my job," Hawkins said through gritted teeth. "And you are interfering with it. Now get out before I arrest you for obstruction." "Then arrest me," Cole said, and he moved to stand between Victoria and the sheriff, his body a barrier between them. "Because I am not leaving until you explain to me exactly what evidence you have against this woman beyond the word of one frightened clerk." Hawkins stared at him for a long moment, then seemed to make a calculation. Whatever he saw in Cole's eyes made him back down slightly. "Fine," he said. "We have a witness who places her at the scene. We have the fact that she is new to town, that nobody really knows her. We have the fact that her husband is in financial trouble, and we have the fact that she cannot account for every moment of her mourning." "That is not evidence," Cole said flatly. "That is circumstantial garbage, and you know it. If you want to search someone, search me." The words seemed to hang in the air, and Victoria felt her breath catch. "What?" she whispered. Cole did not look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Hawkins. "Search me, not her," he repeated. "I was in town this morning too. I walked past the bank. I am in financial trouble, just ask anyone. Hell, I fit your description better than she does. So search me first. Strip me down right here if you want, but you leave her alone unless you find something on me that gives you actual cause." "You are being ridiculous," Hawkins said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Am I?" Cole turned to face Victoria for the first time, and she saw something in his eyes she could not name. Determination, certainly, but also something softer, something that made her heart skip. "Mrs. Sutton, do you consent to me being searched in your place?" Victoria did not understand what was happening, why this stranger was offering himself up as a sacrificial lamb for her sake. But she knew an opportunity when she saw one. "Yes," she said quietly. "Thank you." Cole turned back to Hawkins. "There. You have your consent. Now search me." The search was thorough and humiliating, conducted in the main office with half a dozen witnesses watching through the windows. Cole submitted to it without complaint, his face impassive as Hawkins went through every pocket, every fold of clothing, every inch of his person looking for the stolen payroll. When nothing was found, Hawkins moved to Cole's saddlebags, which had been brought in from his horse. Again, nothing. "Satisfied?" Cole asked when it was done, and Hawkins had no choice but to nod. "Mrs. Sutton, you are free to go," Hawkins said grudgingly. "But do not leave town. I may have more questions." Victoria stood on shaking legs, her relief so profound it made her dizzy. Cole steadied her with a hand on her elbow, his touch gentle despite the strength she could feel in his fingers. "Come on," he said quietly. "I will take you home." They rode in silence for the first few miles, Victoria on Cole's horse behind him because her wagon had been left at the ranch, and there was no other transportation available. She held onto his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt, and tried to process everything that had happened. The accusation, the interrogation, this man's inexplicable defense of her. Finally, she could bear the silence no longer. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of the horse's hooves on the hard, packed earth. Cole did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was thoughtful. "Because it was not right," he said. "Hawkins was bullying you. He had no real evidence, just suspicion and meanness. I could not stand by and watch it happen." "But you do not know me," Victoria said. "I could be guilty." "You are not," Cole said with absolute certainty. "I saw your face in there. That was not the face of a thief." That was the face of someone scared and confused and angry at being treated unfairly. I know that look. I have worn it myself more times than I care to count. There was a story there, Victoria sensed, layers of history and pain that this man carried with him. She wanted to ask, to understand, but it seemed too intimate a question for someone she had just met. Instead, she said, "Thank you. I do not know what would have happened if you had not come." "Nothing good," Cole said grimly. "Hawkins is a decent sheriff most of the time, but he gets ideas in his head and will not let them go. He decided you were guilty the moment someone mentioned a woman near the bank. He would have torn your life apart trying to prove it." They rode on, and Victoria became aware of the landscape around them, the endless expanse of scrubland dotted with mesquite and the occasional stubborn oak. The sky above was deepening to purple, stars beginning to prick through the gathering darkness. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, this country, and she was still learning to love it. "You are friends with my husband?" she asked, because she needed to understand the connection, why this man had been at her wedding. "Not exactly," Cole said. "I know Patterson, your foreman. We worked together on a drive up to Dodge City 5 years ago. He invited me to the wedding because I was passing through town. I stayed for the free meal." There was humor in his voice, self-deprecating and easy, and Victoria found herself smiling despite everything. "I am glad you did," she said. They reached the ranch as full darkness fell, and William was already there, standing on the porch with a lantern in his hand, and fear etched into every line of his face. He rushed forward as Cole reined in the horse, his hands reaching up to help Victoria down. "Victoria, thank God," he said, pulling her into an embrace that was more desperate than tender. "Patterson just told me what happened. Are you all right?" "I am fine," Victoria said, though it was not entirely true. She felt shaken, violated by the accusations and the suspicion in people's eyes. But she was home now, safe, and that would have to be enough. William looked past her to Cole, who had dismounted and was standing a respectful distance away. "Henderson Cole," William said, and there was something odd in his tone, a formality that seemed forced. "I am told I owe you thanks for bringing my wife home." "No thanks necessary," Cole said. "I was glad to help." The two men stared at each other, and Victoria sensed an undercurrent she did not understand. William's jaw was tight, his eyes hard in a way she had never seen before. "Even so," William said, "I am grateful. Patterson, see that Mr. Cole is given a meal and a place to sleep for the night. It is too late for him to ride back to town." "That is not necessary," Cole began, but Patterson, who had appeared from the direction of the bunkhouse, cut him off. "Nonsense," the foreman said gruffly. "It is the least we can do. Come on, Cole. Let these two have their piece." Cole hesitated, his eyes meeting Victoria's for just a moment. In that glance, she saw something that made her heart skip again, a connection she could not name and did not want to examine. Then he nodded and followed Patterson toward the bunkhouse, leaving Victoria alone with her husband. Inside the house, William poured himself a whiskey and drank it in one swallow. His hands were shaking, Victoria noticed, and his face was pale beneath his tan. "Tell me everything," he said, and she did, recounting the sheriff's arrival, the accusations, the interrogation, and Cole's intervention. When she finished, William was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We are leaving." Victoria stared at him. "What? Leaving Desdemona?" William repeated. "As soon as possible. I will sell the ranch and we will go somewhere else. California, maybe, or up to Montana. Somewhere this ugliness cannot follow us." "But this is your home," Victoria protested. "You have worked so hard to build this ranch. We cannot just abandon it because of false accusations." "It is not just the accusations," William said, and there was something in his voice that made Victoria go cold. Victoria, there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you before we married, but I was afraid you would refuse me if you knew. Victoria sat down slowly, her legs suddenly unsteady. What are you talking about? William poured another whiskey, his hands still shaking. The ranch is not doing well, he said. Hawkins was right about that. I am in debt, Victoria, serious debt. The bank holds the mortgage, and I am 3 months behind on payments. Carlyle has been patient, but his patience is running out. I was hoping to make it through another season, to get a good price for the cattle and pay off enough to keep us afloat, but the drought has killed that hope. Victoria felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Why did you not tell me this before we married? She asked, and she heard the betrayal in her own voice. Because I was desperate, William said bluntly. Your father left you money, Victoria, not a fortune, but enough. Enough to save the ranch, to give us breathing room. I thought that once we were married, once we were building a life together, it would not matter how it started. I thought I could make you happy, that we could make this work. The money. Her father's legacy. The $3,000 she had inherited when he died. She had mentioned it to William during their courtship, had told him it was safely deposited in a bank in Mississippi, waiting for her to decide what to do with it. She had never imagined that this was the reason he had courted her so quickly, proposed so suddenly. You married me for my money, Victoria said, and the words felt like ash in her mouth. No, William said quickly, kneeling in front of her, his hands covering hers. I mean, yes, the money was part of it, but Victoria, I care for you. I do. You are kind and intelligent and beautiful, and I believe we can build a good life together. The money was just practical, a way to ensure we had that chance. Victoria pulled her hands away from his, standing and moving to the window where she could stare out at the darkness beyond. Her mind was reeling, trying to process this new information, to reconcile the man she thought she had married with this stranger who admitted to using her. You love me? She asked quietly. The silence that followed was answer enough. I could, William said finally. In time, I think I could love you very much. But not now. Not yet. Their marriage was built on need and desperation and lies, and Victoria felt the weight of it crushing her. She thought of her father, of the small house in Mississippi where she had grown up, of the life she had left behind in search of something better. This was supposed to be her new beginning, her chance at happiness. Instead, she had walked into a trap. I need time, she said, not looking at him. I need to think. Victoria, please, William began, but she cut him off. Tomorrow, she said firmly. We will talk about this tomorrow, but tonight I need to be alone. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the bed she had shared with William for only 3 nights, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of her life. The accusations of theft, William's confession, the memory of Henderson Cole standing between her and the sheriff, offering himself up in her place without hesitation. Why had he done that? What had he seen in her that inspired such loyalty from a stranger? Morning came gray and overcast, threatening rain that would likely never materialize. Victoria dressed and went outside, needing air and space and something other than the confines of the house. She walked toward the barn, not really paying attention to where she was going, and nearly collided with Cole, who was leading his horse out of the stable. Mrs. Sutton, he said, stepping back quickly. I apologize. I was just leaving. Victoria, she said impulsively. Please call me Victoria. He studied her for a moment, those intelligent eyes taking in her pale face and the shadows beneath her eyes. Did you get any sleep? He asked. Not much, she admitted. Too much to think about. Cole nodded as though he understood. It will get better, he said. Hawkins will find the real thief eventually, and this will all blow over. Will it? Victoria asked, and she heard the doubt in her own voice. In my experience, People remember accusations more than they remember exonerations. I will always be the woman who was suspected of stealing the payroll, no matter what the truth is. Then maybe you need to find the truth yourself, Cole said. Prove your innocence beyond any doubt. Make them eat their words. It was an appealing idea, but Victoria had no notion of how to even begin such a task. I would not know where to start, she said. Start with the facts, Cole said. Someone stole that payroll. Someone who knew when it would be at the bank, who knew how to get in and out without being seen. That takes planning and knowledge. Who in Desdemona has that kind of information? Victoria thought about it. The bank employees, she said slowly. The railroad officials. Anyone who handles the payroll on a regular basis. Exactly, Cole said. So you start asking questions. Quietly, carefully, but persistently. You find out who might have had motive and opportunity. You build your own case. That sounds like something you have done before, Victoria observed. Cole's expression shuddered, becoming unreadable. I have been accused of things I did not do, he said carefully. I know what it is like to have your word doubted, your character questioned. I learned to fight back the only way I could with evidence and persistence. There was pain in his voice, old and deep, and Victoria felt an unexpected surge of kinship with this man. They were both outsiders, both struggling against the weight of other people's judgments. Will you help me? She asked before she could stop herself. I know I have no right to ask, that you have already done more than anyone could expect, but I do not know who else to turn to. William wants to leave Desdemona to run away, but I cannot live my life under this cloud. I need to clear my name. Cole was silent for a long moment, and Victoria thought he would refuse. Why would he not? She was a married woman, practically a stranger, and her problems were not his responsibility. But then he sighed and nodded. All right, he said. I will help you, but we need to be careful. If Hawkins thinks you are investigating on your own, he will only become more suspicious. Relief flooded through Victoria, so intense it made her lightheaded. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you so much. Do not thank me yet, Cole said with a wry smile. We might not find anything. The real thief could be long gone by now, halfway to Mexico with the payroll. Or they could still be in Desdemona, Victoria said. Hiding in plain sight, thinking they got away with it. Maybe, Cole agreed. We will find out. They began that afternoon, riding into Desdemona together with William's grudging permission. Victoria's husband had not been pleased about her plan to investigate, had argued that it was dangerous and foolish and would only make things worse. But Victoria had been firm, surprising herself with her own resolve. She would not run. She would not hide. She would face this head-on and prove her innocence, no matter what it took. The first stop was the bank, where Mr. Carlyle received them in his office with obvious reluctance. He was a portly man in his 50s, with thinning hair and nervous hands that played constantly with the papers on his desk. Mrs. Sutton, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. Mr. Cole, what can I do for you? We want to know about the robbery, Victoria said directly. How it happened, who might have been responsible, Carlyle's face flushed. I have told the sheriff everything I know, he said stiffly. I have nothing to add. Humor us, Cole said, his voice deceptively mild. Walk us through what happened that morning. Carlyle sighed but complied. The payroll had arrived on the morning train, he explained, as it did every 2 weeks. $10,000 in cash, delivered by armed guards to the bank where it was stored in the vault until the railroad paymaster came to collect it. On the morning in question, the guards had made the delivery at 8 in the morning. The paymaster was supposed to arrive at 10, but when he came, the money was gone. The vault was still locked, Victoria asked. Yes, Carlyle said. There was no sign of forced entry. The money simply vanished. That is impossible, Cole said flatly. Money does not vanish. Someone with access to the vault took it. No one has access except myself and my head clerk, Tom Garrett, Carlyle said defensively. And I was here the entire time. I never left the bank. What about Garrett? Victoria asked. Tom left briefly to deliver some documents to the railroad office, Carlyle admitted. But he was only gone for 20 minutes, and the vault was locked the entire time. How do you know it was locked? Cole pressed. Did you check it during those 20 minutes? Carlyle hesitated. No, he said finally, but the lock showed no signs of tampering. Can we speak with Tom Garrett? Victoria asked. He is not here, Carlyle said quickly. He has been quite upset by all this. The shock of it, you understand. He has taken some time to recover. Where can we find him? Cole asked. Carlyle looked trapped. He is staying with his sister on the edge of town, he said reluctantly. The house with the blue shutters near the old mill. They left the bank with more questions than answers. What do you think? Victoria asked as they walked toward the livery where they had left their horses. I think Carlyle is hiding something, Cole said. And I think we need to talk to Tom Garrett. The house with blue shutters was small and run down, the paint peeling in the harsh Texas sun. A woman answered their knock, young and tired-looking, with a baby on her hip and suspicion in her eyes. What do you want? She asked. We are looking for Tom Garrett, Victoria said gently. Is he here? He does not want to talk to anyone, the woman said, starting to close the door. Please, Victoria said, putting her hand on the door. I am the woman who was accused, Victoria Sutton. I just want to understand what Tom saw. I am not here to cause trouble. The woman hesitated, then called over her shoulder. Tom, there are people here to see you. A man appeared behind her, thin and nervous, with darting eyes that would not settle on anything for long. This was Tom Garrett, Victoria realized, the bank clerk whose testimony had nearly destroyed her life. You, he said when he saw her, and his face went pale. I need to know what you saw, Victoria said, keeping her voice calm and even. You told Sheriff Hawkins you saw me near the bank. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw, every detail you remember. I already told the sheriff, Tom said, but his voice was uncertain. Tell me, Victoria insisted. Please. Tom looked at his sister, who nodded encouragement. All right, he said. Come in. Inside the cramped front room, Tom sat on the edge of a worn chair and twisted his hands together. It was early, he said. Maybe 8:30. I was on my way to deliver some papers to the railroad office, like Mr. Carlyle said. I went out the back door of the bank through the alley, and I saw a woman standing near the back entrance. She was wearing a green dress, and she had dark hair. She looked nervous, kept glancing around like she was watching for something. Did you see her face? Cole asked. Tom shook his head. Not clearly. She was turned away from me, and I only saw her for a moment. But she matched the description I heard later of you, he said, looking at Victoria. So I told the sheriff what I saw. Could it have been someone else? Victoria asked. Another woman in a green dress, I suppose, Tom said hesitantly. But how many women in Desdemona wear green dresses and have dark hair? More than he thought, Victoria suspected. But she understood how his mind had worked, how easy it was to take incomplete information and fill in the blanks with assumption. Did you see anyone else? She asked. Anyone at all near the bank? Tom thought about it. There was a man, he said slowly, down the street near the general store. I noticed him because he seemed to be watching the bank, but I thought nothing of it at the time. Lots of people watch the bank. What did he look like? Cole asked, leaning forward. Tall, Tom said, wearing a long coat, which was strange because it was already hot, and a hat pulled low over his face. I could not see his features. Victoria exchanged a glance with Cole. A man watching the bank, dressed to conceal his identity. That was more significant than a glimpse of a woman in a green dress. "Did you tell the sheriff about this man?" she asked. Tom's face reddened. "No," he admitted. "I forgot about him until just now. With everything that happened, finding out the money was gone, the questioning, it all got confused in my head." "Can you remember anything else about him?" Cole pressed. "Anything at all?" Tom closed his eyes, concentrating. "His boots," he said finally. "They were expensive, fine leather with silver spurs, the kind a wealthy man would wear or someone who wanted to look wealthy. It was not much, but it was something." Victoria felt a flicker of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. They thanked Tom and left, standing on the street outside his sister's house in the midday heat. "Silver spurs," Cole mused. "That narrows it down. Not many men in Desdemona can afford silver spurs." "The railroad officials," Victoria said. "They are the only ones with that kind of money." "And they would know exactly when the payroll was being delivered," Cole added. "They would have access to information about the bank's security, the timing of the guards." They spent the rest of the day making inquiries, subtle and careful, asking questions that seemed innocent but built a picture of the railroad's operations in Desdemona. Victoria discovered that there were 3 senior railroad officials stationed in town. Marcus Webb, the paymaster who had come to collect the missing money; John Fletcher, the station master; and Raymond Cross, the chief surveyor who oversaw the expansion of the rail lines through the region. Of the 3, Cross seemed the most likely suspect. He was known for his expensive tastes, his fine clothes and imported whiskey. He lived in the best hotel in Desdemona, despite having a perfectly good house available through the railroad. And he had been seen gambling at the Silver Star Saloon, often losing more money than a railroad employee should have been able to afford. But suspicion was not evidence, and they needed more than gossip to convince Sheriff Hawkins. Victoria was learning that investigation was painstaking work, requiring patience and persistence and a willingness to chase down leads that often went nowhere. Cole was a good teacher, she discovered, methodical and thorough, never letting frustration cloud his judgment. She found herself watching him as they worked, noticing the way he listened to people, really listened, giving them his full attention. She noticed the kindness in his eyes when he spoke to someone down on their luck, the way he automatically helped an elderly woman carry her packages, refusing any thanks. They had stopped at the hotel to see if Cross was available when Victoria finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Why are you really doing this?" she said as they stood in the hotel lobby, waiting for the clerk to check if Cross was in his room. "You barely know me. You have no stake in whether my name is cleared or not, so why are you spending your time on this?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "I told you," he said finally. "I know what it is like to be accused unfairly." "There is more to it than that," Victoria pressed gently. "I can see it in your face. What happened to you?" Cole looked at her, and she saw the war in his eyes, the struggle between privacy and the desire to be understood. "I was younger," he said slowly. 20, maybe 21. I was working as a cowhand on a ranch up in Colorado. Good job, good people. I thought I had found a place where I belonged. Then some money went missing from the ranch house. Not a lot, $100, but it was the owner's savings. Someone said they had seen me near the house around the time it disappeared. Just like with you, no real evidence, just suspicion." "Were you arrested?" Victoria asked. "No," Cole said. "But I was fired. Word spread. Suddenly no one would hire me. I was blacklisted, marked as a thief. I spent 2 years drifting, taking whatever work I could find, always moving before people found out about my past. It nearly destroyed me." "What changed?" Victoria asked softly. "I got lucky," Cole said. I met a man who did not care about rumors, who judged me on my actions instead of my reputation. He gave me a chance, taught me to stand up for myself, to fight back against injustice wherever I found it. He died 3 years ago, but I have tried to live by the lessons he taught me. When I saw Hawkins going after you, I saw myself, and I knew I could not stand by and do nothing. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She reached out and touched his arm, a brief gesture of gratitude and understanding. "Thank you," she said, "for trusting me with that story and for helping me now." Cole covered her hand with his, just for a moment, and Victoria felt a jolt of something electric pass between them. She pulled back quickly, confused and alarmed by her own reaction. She was a married woman. She had no business feeling anything for Henderson Cole beyond gratitude and friendship. But as she looked at him, standing in the dusty hotel lobby with the afternoon sun slanting through the windows and turning his hair to gold, she knew she was lying to herself. She felt more than gratitude. She felt drawn to him in a way she had never been drawn to William, in a way that was dangerous and impossible and utterly beyond her control. The hotel clerk returned to inform them that Mr. Cross was not in his room, but could be found at the saloon. Victoria and Cole exchanged a glance, both thinking the same thing. If Cross was gambling again, perhaps spending money he should not have, it would be another piece of evidence. The Silver Star Saloon was not a place where respectable women went, but Victoria was past caring about respectability. She walked through the swinging doors with her head high, Cole at her side, and felt the conversation die as every head turned to stare. She scanned the room and spotted Cross at a corner table, cards in his hand and a pile of chips in front of him. Cole approached the table, Victoria slightly behind him. "Mr. Cross," Cole said pleasantly. "Might we have a word?" Cross looked up, his eyes narrowing. He was a handsome man in his 40s, with dark hair graying at the temples and the kind of confidence that came from privilege. "I am in the middle of a game," he said dismissively. "It will only take a moment," Cole said, his voice still pleasant but with an edge of steel underneath. Cross sighed and threw down his cards. "Fine," he said, standing, "but make it quick." They moved to a quieter corner of the saloon, away from the curious ears of the other patrons. "We are investigating the payroll theft," Victoria said directly. "We have reason to believe you might have information that could help us." Cross's expression hardened. "Is that so?" he said coldly. "And what reason would that be?" "You have expensive tastes," Cole said. "Fine clothes, fine whiskey, gambling debts. Where does a railroad surveyor get that kind of money?" "That is none of your business," Cross snapped. "It is if you stole the payroll to fund your habits," Victoria said, surprising herself with her boldness. Cross's face turned red. "How dare you?" he hissed. "You, of all people, accusing me. You are the one everyone is talking about. You are the thief they should be arresting." "Then prove it," Cole said softly. "Prove she is guilty and we will leave you alone. But if you cannot, then maybe you should think about proving your own innocence instead." The two men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. Then Cross laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You want proof," he said. "Fine. I have money because my family has money. Old Boston money, not that it is any concern of yours. I took this job to escape my family's expectations, not because I need the salary. I gamble because I enjoy it and I can afford to lose. Check with my bank in Boston if you do not believe me. They will confirm that I have a substantial trust fund." It was plausible, Victoria had to admit. Rich men's sons often did take jobs on the frontier to prove themselves, to escape the suffocating expectations of high society. But it also could be a lie, a convenient excuse to explain away suspicious behavior. "Where were you on the morning of the theft?" Cole asked. "In my room at the hotel," Cross said. "Sleeping off a hangover from the night before. Ask the staff. They brought me breakfast at 10 o'clock and can confirm I was there." "Did anyone see you before 10? Victoria asked. Cross hesitated. "No," he admitted. "But that does not mean I was out robbing the bank. It means I was sleeping like any sensible person after a night of drinking." They left the saloon with more questions and no clear answers. Cross could be guilty, or he could be exactly what he claimed to be, a bored rich man playing at being a frontiersman. They needed more information, more evidence, and Victoria was beginning to feel the weight of the task they had undertaken. Over the next several days, Victoria and Cole became a familiar sight in Desdemona, asking questions, following leads, piecing together the movements of everyone who might have had access to the payroll. They interviewed the guards who had delivered the money, the railroad paymaster, the other bank employees. They visited the telegraph office to check if anyone had sent suspicious messages on the day of the theft. They even spoke to the prostitutes at the boarding house, thinking that men sometimes talked too freely in the aftermath of passion. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Several people mentioned seeing a man in a long coat near the bank that morning, though no one had gotten a clear look at his face. The guards who delivered the payroll mentioned that someone at the bank had asked detailed questions about their schedule, though they could not remember who. And the telegraph operator recalled sending a message to Santa Fe for someone at the railroad. Though he could not remember the exact contents, through it all, Victoria found herself growing closer to Cole in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. They fell into an easy partnership, finishing each other's thoughts, anticipating each other's needs. She learned that he loved to raid, a surprising passion for a cowboy, and that he dreamed of someday owning a small ranch where he could raise horses. He learned that she had always wanted to see the ocean, that she loved thunderstorms, and that she played the piano though there was no piano at William's ranch for her to play. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing, and Victoria found herself looking forward to their time together with an intensity that frightened her. She told herself it was just because he was helping her, because he treated her with respect and kindness that she had never received from William. But she knew in her heart that it was more than that. She was falling in love with Henderson Cole, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. William noticed. Of course he noticed. He watched them ride off together each morning with a tight expression, and when they returned in the evenings, he questioned Victoria about what they had learned, where they had gone, who they had spoken with. His questions felt like accusations, and Victoria found herself growing resentful of his suspicion. "He is helping me," she told William one night after a particularly tense dinner. "He is helping to clear my name, which is more than you have done." "I offered to take you away from here," William shot back, "to give you a fresh start, but you refused." "Because running away is not a solution," Victoria said. "It is cowardice." "And spending every day with another man is what, exactly?" William asked, his voice sharp. "Do you think I am blind, Victoria? Do you think I do not see the way you look at him, the way he looks at you?" Victoria felt her face flush. "Nothing inappropriate has happened," she said firmly. "Henderson has been a perfect gentleman." "Henderson," William repeated mockingly. "You call him by his first name now. How intimate." "You are being ridiculous," Victoria said, but guilt gnawed at her because William was not entirely wrong. She was attracted to Cole in a way that went far beyond appropriate. She dreamed about him at night, imagined what it would be like to feel his arms around her, his lips on hers. But she had not acted on those feelings, had kept their relationship strictly proper, and she resented William for making her feel guilty about something that existed only in her mind. The breakthrough came almost 2 weeks after the theft. when Victoria and Cole were going through the bank's records one more time, looking for anything they might have missed. Carlyle had finally, reluctantly, given them access after Cole had implied that refusing would make the banker look even more suspicious. Victoria was examining the ledger that recorded deposits and withdrawals when something caught her eye. "Cole," she said slowly, "look at this." Cole came to stand beside her, so close she could feel the heat of his body. He looked where she was pointing. "What am I seeing?" he asked. "This entry," Victoria said. "A withdrawal of $500 made the day before the theft, but look at the signature." Cole leaned closer, his breath stirring her hair. "That is not Carlyle's handwriting," he said. "Or Garrett's. I have seen both their signatures enough times to know." "No," Victoria agreed, "but it is similar enough that someone not paying close attention might not notice. Someone forged this withdrawal, took $500 from the bank, and no one caught it." "Because they were planning something bigger," Cole said, his voice excited. "They were testing the system, seeing if they could get away with forgery. When it worked, they moved on to the payroll." "But who?" Victoria asked. "Who has access to the bank's records, who knows how to forge signatures well enough to fool people?" They looked at each other, the same realization dawning. "Garrett," they said simultaneously. Tom Garrett, the nervous bank clerk who had been so quick to point the finger at Victoria. Tom Garrett, who had conveniently been away from the bank during the crucial 20 minutes when the payroll disappeared. Tom Garrett, who was struggling to support his sister and her baby on a clerk's salary. "We need to talk to him again," Victoria said, but when they arrived at the house with blue shutters, Tom's sister told them he was gone. "He left yesterday," she said, worry etched into every line of her face. "Said he had to go to Fort Worth on business for the bank. But Mr. Carlyle came by this morning looking for him, said he never authorized any trip." "Do you know where he went?" Cole asked urgently. "No," she said. "He just packed a bag and left. He seemed scared, kept looking over his shoulder like someone was following him." "Did he take anything unusual with him?" Victoria asked. "Anything heavy?" Tom's sister thought about it. "His saddlebags were full," she said slowly. "Heavier than they should have been for a short trip. I asked him about it, but he just said he was bringing supplies." Victoria and Cole ran for their horses. If Tom had the payroll money, if he was fleeing Desdemona, they had to catch him before he got too far. They rode hard toward Fort Worth, the most likely destination for someone trying to disappear. The road was rough and dusty, the afternoon sun beating down on them without mercy, but Victoria did not care. She was focused entirely on catching Tom Garrett, on proving her innocence once and for all. They spotted him an hour outside of Desdemona, his horse laboring under the weight of the heavy saddlebags. When he saw them coming, he tried to run, whipping his horse into a gallop. But his horse was tired and overburdened, and Cole's mount was fresh and fast. Cole caught up within minutes, reaching out to grab Tom's reins and bringing both horses to a stop. Tom tried to fight, swinging wildly at Cole, but Cole subdued him easily, his years as a working cowboy giving him strength and skill that the clerk could not match. Victoria dismounted and opened Tom's saddlebags, her hands shaking. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were stacks of bills, thousands of dollars, the missing payroll. "It is over, Tom," Cole said, holding the struggling clerk in an iron grip. "We found the money, we know you took it." Tom went limp, all the fight draining out of him. "You do not understand," he sobbed. "I did not want to do it, but I needed the money. My sister, her husband, left her with nothing, and I could not watch her and the baby starve. The bank was right there, all that money just sitting in the vault, and I thought just this once, just enough to help her get back on her feet." "So you stole $10,000? Victoria asked incredulously. "I was only going to take 1,000, Tom said miserably. But when I opened the vault, when I saw all that money, I lost my head. I thought I could take it all, disappear somewhere, start over. I thought no one would suspect me, not the quiet bank clerk who never caused any trouble. So you blamed me instead, Victoria said, anger rising in her chest. You nearly destroyed my life to save your own. I am sorry, Tom whispered. I am so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I just panicked when the sheriff started asking questions. I remembered seeing you near the bank that morning, and I thought if I could direct suspicion toward you, it would buy me time to get away. They brought Tom back to Desdemona in chains, the money secured in Victoria's saddlebags. Sheriff Hawkins met them at his office, his face a mixture of chagrin and relief. Mrs. Sutton, he said stiffly, it appears I owe you an apology. You owe me more than that, Victoria said coldly. You owe me a public exoneration. I want everyone in Desdemona to know that I was innocent, that I was wrongly accused. You will have it, Hawkins promised, and Garrett here will face the full extent of the law for what he did. The next few days passed in a blur. The story of Victoria's investigation and Tom Garrett's capture spread through Desdemona like wildfire. People who had whispered about her behind their hands now went out of their way to congratulate her, to apologize for doubting her. Mr. Carlyle was particularly effusive in his praise, though Victoria suspected it was more about protecting his bank's reputation than any genuine remorse. But the vindication, sweet as it was, could not erase the complications that remained. Victoria's marriage to William had been strained to the breaking point by the events of the past weeks. They barely spoke to each other anymore, communicating only in terse, necessary exchanges. William had grown increasingly bitter, resentful of the time Victoria had spent with Cole, jealous of the bond that had formed between them. And there was Cole himself, a constant presence in Victoria's thoughts, even when he was not physically present. He had stayed in Desdemona after Tom's arrest, taking a job at the livery stable while he decided what to do next. Victoria saw him every time she went to town, and each encounter left her more confused and conflicted than the last. It came to a head on a Sunday afternoon, 3 weeks after the payroll was recovered. Victoria had ridden into town alone, telling William she needed to pick up some supplies. But the truth was she needed to see Cole, to talk to him, to understand what was happening between them. She found him at the livery, grooming a horse with sure, gentle strokes. He looked up when she entered, and the smile that crossed his face made her heart ache. "Victoria," he said, "I did not expect to see you today." "I needed to talk to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About us." Cole set down the brush, his expression becoming serious. "There is no us," he said gently. "You are married, Victoria, to a good man who is trying to build a life for the two of you." "Is he?" Victoria asked bitterly. "Is William a good man? Or is he just a desperate man who married me for my money?" "That does not matter," Cole said. "You made vows. You committed yourself to him and he to you. That means something." "Does it?" Victoria stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in Cole's brown eyes. "Does it mean something when those vows were built on lies? When there is no love, no real partnership, just need and obligation?" "Victoria," Cole said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "Do not do this. Do not make this harder than it already is." "Harder for who?" Victoria asked. "For you." "Because it is already impossible for me. I cannot stop thinking about you, Cole. I cannot stop wishing things were different, that I had met you first, before I made promises I cannot keep." Cole closed his eyes, and Victoria saw the struggle playing out on his face. When he opened them again, there was pain there and longing and a determination that broke her heart. "I think about you too," he admitted. "More than I should, more than is right. But Victoria, I will not be the reason you break your vows." I will not be the man who destroys your marriage, no matter how much I might want to be with you." "Then what do we do?" Victoria asked, and she felt tears start to fall. "How do I go back to William? How do I live in a house with a man I do not love when my heart belongs to someone else?" Cole reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb, the touch so tender it made her sob. "You be strong," he said quietly. "You honor your commitments. You find a way to build something with William, something real and honest. And you let me go, because holding on will only bring us both misery." "I do not know if I can," Victoria whispered. "You can," Cole said. "You are the strongest person I know, Victoria Brennan. You faced down false accusations. You risked everything to clear your name. You never gave up even when it seemed hopeless. You can do this too." Victoria wanted to argue, to fight, to refuse to accept what he was saying, but she knew he was right. As much as she loved Cole, as much as she wanted to be with him, she had made a commitment to William. Breaking her vows would make her no better than the people who had accused her falsely, would destroy whatever honor and integrity she still possessed. "Will you leave Desdemona?" she asked, though the words hurt to say. "I think I have to," Cole said, "for both our sakes. As long as I am here, as long as we can see each other, it will be too hard to move on." Victoria nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Cole pulled her into his arms, one last embrace that she knew would have to last her a lifetime. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the scent of him, leather and horse, and something uniquely his own, committing it to memory. "I love you," she whispered against his shirt. "I want you to know that. Even if we can never be together, even if this is goodbye, I love you." "I love you too," Cole said, his voice breaking. "I will always love you, Victoria, but loving you means letting you go, means wanting what is best for you even if it kills me." They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the dim light of the stable, two people caught between duty and desire, honor and heartbreak. Then Victoria pulled away, wiping her eyes, trying to compose herself. "Goodbye, Henderson Cole," she said softly. "Goodbye, Victoria Brennan Sutton," he replied. Victoria turned and walked out of the stable, every step feeling like it took all the strength she possessed. She did not look back, knowing that if she did, she would not have the courage to keep walking. She climbed onto her horse and rode back to the ranch, tears streaming down her face, her heart shattered but her integrity intact. William was waiting on the porch when she returned. He looked at her tear-stained face and seemed to understand. "You said goodbye to him," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Victoria said, dismounting. "It is over. He is leaving Desdemona." William nodded slowly. "I know I have not been the husband you deserved," he said quietly. "I know I lied to you, used you, but Victoria, I do care for you. I want to try to make this marriage work, if you will give me the chance." Victoria looked at him, this man she had married in hope and ignorance, this man who had betrayed her trust, but who was now offering something that looked like genuine remorse. "I will try," she said finally. "But William, things have to change. No more lies, no more secrets. If we are going to build a marriage, it has to be built on honesty." "I agree," William said. "And Victoria, about your inheritance. I want you to know that you do not have to use it to save the ranch. I will find another way. I will not take your father's money." It was an olive branch, and Victoria appreciated it even as she understood what it would mean. Without her money, William would likely lose the ranch. They would have to start over, somewhere else with nothing. But perhaps that was what they needed. A clean slate, a chance to build something new together. "We will figure it out," she said. "Together." The months that followed were hard, harder than Victoria had ever imagined. William sold the ranch to pay off his debts, and they moved to a small farm outside of Dallas where land was cheaper and opportunity more abundant. They worked side by side, clearing land, planting crops, building a life from scratch. It was back-breaking labor, and there were days when Victoria wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But slowly, gradually, something began to shift between her and William. Working together, struggling together, they began to know each other in ways they never had during their brief courtship. Victoria discovered that William had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was relaxed, that he was patient and methodical, good with his hands. William discovered that Victoria was not the delicate city girl he had assumed, that she could work as hard as any man and never complain about the rough conditions. They talked, really talked, sharing their hopes and fears and dreams. William told her about growing up poor, about the desperation that had driven him to make bad decisions. Victoria told him about her loneliness after her father died, about feeling adrift in the world with no anchor. They were both damaged people, she realized, trying to heal their wounds and build something better. Love did not come quickly. But respect came, and companionship, and a tentative affection that grew stronger with each passing season. Victoria still thought of Cole sometimes, especially on quiet evenings when the work was done and she had time to remember. She wondered where he was, what he was doing, if he ever thought of her. But the sharp pain of losing him had dulled to a bittersweet ache, manageable and distant. 2 years after they left Desdemona, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. The baby came in the spring, a healthy boy with William's dark hair and Victoria's green eyes. They named him Daniel, and his arrival completed the transformation of their household from a place of duty and obligation to something that felt like a real home. Victoria loved her son with a fierce intensity that surprised her. She had not known it was possible to feel so much, to have your heart so completely wrapped up in another person's existence. Daniel was bright and curious, always getting into things, and Victoria found herself laughing more than she had in years. William proved to be a devoted father, patient with Daniel's endless questions, proud of his son's accomplishments. Watching them together, Victoria felt something warm bloom in her chest, a feeling she eventually recognized as love. Not the passionate, all-consuming love she had felt for Cole, but something steadier and deeper, built on shared experiences and mutual respect. 3 years after Daniel's birth, Victoria gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. With 2 children, the farm felt complete, a living thing that required constant care and attention. They prospered slowly but surely, the land yielding good harvests, the children healthy and happy. On Sarah's 5th birthday, a letter arrived from Desdemona. It was from Patterson, William's old foreman, and it contained surprising news. Tom Garrett had served his sentence and been released from prison. He had returned to Desdemona to make amends, working to repay the money he had stolen and rebuild his life. And Henderson Cole had passed through town 6 months earlier, on his way to California, where he had purchased a small horse ranch. Victoria read the letter multiple times, tracing the words about Cole with her finger. He had achieved his dream, she thought. He had found the place where he belonged. She hoped he was happy, hoped he had found someone to share his life with, someone who could love him the way he deserved to be loved. That evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset while William played with the children in the yard, Victoria felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. Her life had not turned out the way she had expected. She had not gotten the passionate romance she had dreamed of as a girl, but she had something better, something more real. She had a partner who respected her, children who loved her, and a home built on honesty and hard work. The memory of that terrible time in Desdemona, the accusations and the investigation and the heartbreak, had faded into something distant, almost dreamlike. But it had shaped her, she realized. It had taught her about strength and integrity, about standing up for what was right even when it was hard. It had taught her about love in all its forms, the painful kind that had to be let go and the steady kind that grew over time. "Mama, come play with us." Daniel called and Victoria stood, brushing off her skirt. "Coming," she called back, and she walked out into the yard where her family waited. Years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. The farm grew more prosperous, and they were able to hire help, easing some of the burden on William and Victoria. Daniel grew into a serious, studious boy who loved books, reminding Victoria of herself at that age. Sarah was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and getting into mischief, keeping them constantly on their toes. When Daniel was 12 and Sarah was 9, William's health began to fail. The years of hard labor had taken their toll, and he developed a persistent cough that would not go away. The doctor diagnosed lung disease, common among farmers who spent their lives breathing in dust and chaff. He prescribed rest and clean air, but they all knew it was only a matter of time. William faced his illness with the same quiet determination he had brought to everything else in his life. He used the time he had left to teach Daniel everything he knew about running the farm, about being a man of integrity and honor. He spent long evenings with Sarah, telling her stories and making her promise to never lose her spirit, her fierce independence. And he talked with Victoria, long conversations that ranged over their entire lives together. "I know I was not the husband you wanted," he said one night, his voice weak but steady. "I know you loved someone else." Victoria started to protest, but William held up his hand. "It is all right," he said. "I made my peace with it long ago. What matters is that you stayed. You honored your vows, you built a life with me, you gave me children I am proud of. That is more than I had any right to expect, given how poorly I treated you at the beginning." "You changed," Victoria said softly, holding his hand. "We both changed. We grew together, learned to love each other in our own way. I have no regrets, William. This life we built, this family, it is more than I ever dreamed of." "You still think of him?" William asked. "Cole." Victoria considered lying, but their marriage had been built on honesty, and she would not dishonor it now. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not the way you think. I think of him as a dear friend, someone who helped me when I needed it most, someone I will always be grateful to. But my heart is here with you and our children. This is where I belong." William smiled, and Victoria saw peace in his eyes. "Good," he said. "That is good." He died 3 days later quietly in his sleep with Victoria holding his hand. The funeral was well attended, a testament to the respect William had earned in the community. Neighbors came from miles around to pay their respects, to offer help to the widow and her children. Victoria grieved, truly grieved, for the man who had been her husband for 15 years. She grieved for the life they had built together, for the partnership they had forged from such unpromising beginnings. She grieved for her children, who had lost their father far too young, but she did not fall apart. She was stronger than that, hardened by years of frontier life, and she knew what she had to do. With Daniel's help, she kept the farm running. He was young, but he had his father's steady temperament and practical skills. Sarah, despite her youth, proved to be a tireless worker, refusing to be coddled or treated as fragile. Together, the three of them managed, taking each day as it came, supporting each other through the hardest times. 5 years after William's death, when Victoria was 42 years old and beginning to accept that she would spend the rest of her life alone, a stranger arrived at the farm. He was older than she remembered, his hair shot through with silver, his face more lined. But she knew him immediately, would have known him anywhere. "Henderson," she breathed, standing from where she had been weeding the garden. Victoria, Cole said, and his voice was the same, deep and warm and achingly familiar. I heard about William. I am sorry. I know you cared for him. What are you doing here? Victoria asked, and she heard the tremor in her own voice. I had to see you, Cole said simply. I have stayed away all these years, kept my promise to let you build your life. But Victoria, I am tired of being without you. I am tired of loving you from a distance. If there is any chance, any hope that you might still feel something for me, I had to come. I had to know. Victoria stared at him, her mind spinning. 20 years had passed since that day in the stable when they had said goodbye. 20 years of hard work and sacrifice, of building a life with William, of raising children and making a home. She was not the same woman she had been then, young and confused and torn between duty and desire. But as she looked at Cole, saw the hope and fear in his eyes, felt the way her heart leaped at the sight of him, she realized that some things never changed. She loved him. She had always loved him, and now, finally, there was nothing standing between them except her own fear. Mama. Sarah's voice came from behind her, curious and a little wary. Who is this? Victoria turned to see both her children approaching, Daniel protective and serious, Sarah openly curious. She looked at them, then back at Cole and made a decision. This is Henderson Cole, she said. He is an old friend, a very dear friend, and I think he is going to be staying for a while. Cole did stay, taking a room at the boarding house in town while he courted Victoria properly. It felt strange to be courted at her age, like a girl again instead of a widow with grown children. But Cole was patient and persistent, showing up at the farm every day to help with chores, to talk with Daniel about horses and ranching, to make Sarah laugh with his stories of the frontier. Daniel was cautious at first, protective of his mother and suspicious of this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. But Cole won him over with quiet competence and genuine respect, treating the young man as an equal rather than a child. Sarah adored him from the start, drawn to his adventurous spirit, and the way he never talked down to her. And Victoria, for her part, found herself falling in love all over again. But it was different this time, not the desperate, impossible passion of her youth, but something richer and more sustainable. They had both lived full lives, both experienced loss and hardship and joy. They came together as equals, two people who knew exactly what they wanted and were brave enough to reach for it. 6 months after Cole's arrival, they were married in a small ceremony at the farm, with Daniel giving his mother away and Sarah serving as maid of honor. It was nothing like Victoria's first wedding, that hasty, ill-advised affair in Desdemona. This was a celebration of love freely chosen, of two people who had waited their whole lives to be together. The years that followed were the happiest of Victoria's life. She and Cole ran the farm together, combining their skills and experience to make it more successful than it had ever been. They traveled too, taking trips to California to see Cole's horse ranch, which he had sold but still loved to visit, and even making it all the way to the ocean so Victoria could finally see the waves she had dreamed of as a girl. Daniel grew up and married a sweet girl from town, taking over the running of the farm and raising his own children on the land his father had worked so hard to secure. Sarah became a teacher, dedicating herself to educating the children of the frontier, fierce and independent and utterly herself. Victoria and Cole grew old together, their hair turning white, their bodies slowing down but their love never diminishing. They spent their evenings on the porch, watching the sunsets and talking about everything and nothing. Two people who had found their way to each other, despite all the obstacles in their path. On the 50th anniversary of that terrible day in Desdemona, when Victoria had been accused of stealing the payroll, when Cole had stood up and offered himself in her place. Victoria sat on that same porch with her husband beside her. Her children and grandchildren were inside, preparing for a celebration, but for this moment, it was just the two of them. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Victoria asked, her hand clasped in Cole's. "If you had not been at that wedding, if you had not stood up for me." "Every day," Cole said. "I think about how lucky I am that I was there, that I was given the chance to know you. You changed my life, Victoria. You made me believe in love and honor and second chances." "You saved me," Victoria said. "Not just from the false accusations, but from a life without real love. You taught me what it means to truly care for someone, to be willing to sacrifice for them. Everything good in my life came from that moment when you stood between me and the sheriff and said, 'Search me, not her.'" Cole lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "We saved each other," he said. "That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves, from our loneliness and fear. It makes us better than we could ever be alone." Inside the house, Victoria could hear her family laughing, calling for them to come in for the celebration. But she sat for one more moment with the man she loved, watching the sun set over the land they had built together, grateful for every twist and turn that had brought them to this moment. The accusations in Desdemona had nearly destroyed her, but they had also brought her to Cole, had set in motion a chain of events that led to this life, this love, this family. And in the end, that made every hardship worth it. Victoria Brennan Sutton Cole had lived a long, full life. She had known hardship and joy, betrayal and redemption, loss and love. She had been accused falsely and proven innocent, had married for the wrong reasons and learned to love truly, had said goodbye to her heart's desire and been given a second chance. As she stood and took Cole's hand, walking into the house where her family waited, Victoria felt complete. Her story had been long and complicated, full of unexpected turns and difficult choices. But it had brought her exactly where she needed to be, surrounded by love and laughter, with the man who had stood up for her when no one else would by her side. The celebration went late into the night, filled with food and music and stories. Grandchildren climbed on Cole's lap, begging for tales of the old days of cowboys and cattle drives and adventure. Victoria watched from across the room, her heart full, as Cole obliged them, his voice strong despite his years, bringing the past to life for a new generation. Later, much later, when everyone had finally gone home or retired to bed, Victoria and Cole walked out into the cool night air. The stars were brilliant overhead, diamond bright in the clear Texas sky. Cole put his arm around Victoria's shoulders and she leaned into him, as natural as breathing. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Cole asked. "For waiting," Victoria said. "For coming back. For loving me enough to give me time to find my way." "I would wait 1,000 years for you," Cole said, and Victoria knew he meant it. "You are worth every moment." They stood there under the stars, two people who had taken the long road to happiness but had finally arrived. And in that moment, Victoria knew with absolute certainty that every choice she had made, every hardship she had endured, every tear she had shed, had been worth it to end up here in this place, with this man. The story that had begun with an accusation and a cowboy's brave stand had grown into something far more beautiful than she could have imagined. It had become a love story for the ages, proof that sometimes the longest journeys lead to the most perfect destinations. And as Victoria stood in her husband's arms, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built together, she knew that she had been given something precious and rare, a second chance at true love, and the wisdom to recognize it when it finally came. The end.